All right, we've talked about rounding whole numbers. We've talked about rounding decimals. But there are a couple of what ifs. What if this happens to me kind of situations. So you're going to come across some of these situations in your practice for today. So let me see if I can pull up an example of one that kind of gave some people a little bit of a hard time. So what this has to do with is when you have a 0 in the place value that you are rounding to. What happens when you have a 0 in the place value that you are rounding to? Now, this is not the only thing that we're going to practice on and work on today, but this is definitely one of the things that we're going to work on today. So, let's look at this. Let's look at a number like how about 1,091 rounded to the nearest 100. Is it possible that we could have a 0 in the hundreds place and still do our job? Yes, it absolutely is. We're going to go about it the exact same way that we have approached every other rounding piece that we have done. We make our place value chart. Make sure you make your place value chart correctly. We have the ones, we have the tens, we have the hundreds, we have the thousands. We figure out what place value we are rounding to. We are rounding to the hundreds place. This is the place value we are rounding to. Our number that is our decision maker is going to be the number to the right, the place value to the right. So it's going to be this number here. This is our decision maker. How do I figure out what to put on the ends of my roller coaster track? Well, I start out with my thousands because I have to have my thousands there. And this has 0 hundreds. So I'm just going to put 0, 0, 0. That represents 1,000 with 0 hundreds in it. When we count by hundreds, or any other number, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So after the 0 comes 1. So this number down here has to have 100 in it. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but how do you find out what's between 0 and 1? Well, we're looking at between 0 and 100. So halfway between 0 and 100 is 50. So in our tens place, we're going to have 50 because that's our decision maker. And that's what's going to have to be on our number line is tens places. So it's 1,050. Okay, so this is our magic number that's going to help us make our decision when we're looking at the tens. Now, we're going to go backwards, counting by tens, all the way down to 0. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So this is going to be 1,040, 1,030, 0, 3, 0, 1,020, and 1,010. On the other side of this, we're going to have 1,060, 1,070, 1,080, 1,090. Looking at this number, we're going to be looking at 1,090 to help us make our decision. Because remember, our tens is our decision maker, so we don't even need to look at our ones. All right, so on this number line, we've already come off of the top of the roller coaster hill, and we are down at the bottom. It's starting to slow down. Our person is still super excited, but her hair is not flowing as much. Maybe she feels sick to her stomach if she's like me. but it's not that far of a distance to get to the end of the track. So at the end of the track, our 100 that we are rounding to is 1,100. It is important for you to understand that when we round, we are looking at the distance between numbers, and we are looking for the shortest distance. That's why we call it the nearest 100 or the nearest 10 or the nearest 1, is because we're looking for the shortest distance. All right, let me see. What else did I find that seemed somewhat tricky? So again, they gave you some numbers where there were multiple place values, but they didn't have you round to the highest place value. And this seemed a little bit tricky for some people. So let's do a decimal that's kind of like that. If we have 6 and 422 thousandths, and we're going to round to the nearest 10, or 10th, sorry, nearest 10th. I was doing so good too. What's the first thing I'm going to ask you to do if you're struggling with this? This is the very first thing I'm going to ask you to do. Make a place value chart. Make a place value chart. Tells us how much our digits are worth. So we have ones, we have tenths, we have hundredths, and we have thousandths. What place value are we rounding to? We are rounding to the nearest tenth. This is the tenths. This is the place value we are rounding to. What is going to help us make the decision? One place to the right is a 2. It's also in the hundredths place value. So our hundredths are our decision makers. All right, we're going to make our roller coaster. On the ends of our roller coaster are the things that we have to choose between. So we know that we're rounding to the nearest tenth. When we look at this number, 6.4 is the tenth in our number. One more than that is going to be 6.5. Again, if it helps you put the little ghosty zeros, go for it. Our magic number is going to have a 5 in it. Halfway between 40 and 50 is going to be 45. So our magic number is 6.45. 6.45, because that's our decision maker. Okay. Now, count backwards. 6.44, 6.43, 6.42, 6.41. This goes forward, 6.46, 6.47, 6.48, and 6.49. My eyes are going crooked trying to do all of these problems. So when we look at our decision maker, we've got 6.42. This is where that falls on our roller coaster track. Unfortunate for our rider, we didn't have enough momentum to get up over that hill. So 4 or less, let it rest. 6.422, which is 6 and 422 thousandths, rounded to the nearest tenth, is 6 and 4 tenths. That's your answer. If you run into any other issues where you need some help trying to figure out what's going on, or what was rounded to or rounded from, or any of that stuff, please feel free to stop by and see me in my classroom. I will look forward to visiting with you about that anytime. Hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.